The late afternoon sun hung low over the Wyoming plains, casting molten gold across the grasslands that swayed like an ocean of fire. The air smelled of dust, horses, and the memory of rain that never came. Caleb Morgan, owner of the Broken Spur Ranch, rode the fence line with his hat pulled low, reins loose in his calloused hand. He was a man molded by land and loss. His wife gone 3 winters now, his heart quieter than the wind that crossed the prairie. But that evening, something broke the rhythm of his solitude. Down by the bend of the river he spotted footprints, small, bare, and fresh. He dismounted, boots crunching softly on the pebbled shore, following the trail into the reeds. That's when he saw her. A young woman sat by the water's edge, shivering in a torn calico dress. Her dark hair clung to her face. Wet and tangled, her arms wrapped tight, around her knees as if she were holding herself together by sheer will. When she heard him, she flinched like a startled deer. Her gray eyes, deep and frightened, lifted to his only for a moment. Before she looked away, Caleb stopped a few feet from her, his voice low and calm. "You lost?" No answer. Only silence and the sound of the river. Then so soft he almost missed it, she whispered, "Please, don't send me back." His brows drew together. "Back where?" Her eyes flicked toward him, pleading, broken. To him. The words hit like a shot in the still air. Caleb's chest tightened. He'd seen that kind of fear before. He took off his hat slowly, his voice steady as he said, "You don't have to go anywhere you don't want to. You're safe here." "Safe?" she repeated, as if she'd forgotten what that word meant. He nodded, extending a rough, weathered hand. After a long pause, she reached out, her fingers trembling. When he felt how cold she was, his jaw set. "Come on," he said gently. "Let's get you warm." He lifted her onto his horse, wrapping his coat around her thin shoulders. The ride back to the ranch was silent, the only sounds the creak of saddle leather and the wind in the cottonwoods. When they reached the big wooden house, he helped her down and led her inside. The warmth of the fireplace touched her face, and for the first time she looked less like a ghost, and more like someone trying to return to life. "You sit by the fire," he said. "I'll fix you something hot." She hesitated. "You don't even know me." He turned, his voice quiet but firm. "Don't need to. You needed help, that's enough." That night, after she'd eaten and wrapped herself in one of his blankets, she looked up at him, tears glistening in her eyes. "Why are you being kind to me?" "Because you look like you've been through hell," he said. Her lip quivered. "He said I wasn't worth anything," she whispered. "Said I should be thankful he kept me alive." Caleb's eyes darkened, but his tone stayed calm. "He was wrong," he said. "Nobody's worthless. You hear me?" She looked at him, truly looked, as though trying to believe him. And for the first time she dared to hope. That night she slept in the guest room. Caleb stood outside beneath the moonlight, staring across the wide plains. Somewhere deep inside, something stirred, not pity, not duty, but the faint pulse of life finding its way back into his chest. Morning came soft and golden, spilling through the windows of the ranch house. Lena, that was her name, stepped onto the porch wearing one of his old flannel shirts. She looked fragile, but there was a quiet determination in her eyes. "Coffee's on the stove," Caleb called from the corral. She smiled faintly. "Thank you." Over the days that followed, she began to help with chores, feeding chickens, brushing horses, tending the small garden. She moved carefully, like someone still learning what freedom felt like. The ranch hands noticed her, whispered a bit, but respected the silence around her story. Caleb never asked what happened. He didn't need to. The bruises on her arms, the scars on her spirit, they said enough. One evening, as the sky turned crimson and the wind carried the scent of coming rain, a lone rider appeared on the horizon. Caleb saw him long before he reached the gate, the way he rode fast and hard, kicking up dust like anger itself. When the man stopped in front of the house, Caleb was already on the porch. "Looking for someone?" he asked evenly. The stranger's eyes were cold and sharp. "Name's Boone. I'm looking for a girl, thin, dark hair. Ran off with what wasn't hers." Caleb's jaw tightened. "You talking about Lena?" Boone sneered. "So she is here. That girl's mine by right." Caleb's hand drifted near his holster. "No one belongs to anyone," he said. "Least of all her." Boone's expression turned mean. "You don't want to make this your problem, rancher." Caleb's voice dropped to a tone that could stop a storm. "Already is." For a moment the world held its breath. Then Boone spat in the dust and wheeled his horse around. You'll regret this, Morgan, he growled, and rode off toward the hills. Lena had been watching from the window, trembling. That was him, she whispered when Caleb came inside. He'll come back. Caleb took her hand, steadying them with his own. Then let him, he said quietly. You're not running anymore. Tears welled in her eyes. Why would you risk yourself for me? He looked at her long and hard. Because everyone deserves someone who won't give up on them. Maybe that's me for you. That night the storm broke. Wind howled and the horses stamped restlessly. Near midnight the sound of hoofbeats shattered the dark. Boone had returned, one this time with 2 men. Caleb was waiting. He stepped out with his rifle, eyes cold as the steel in his hand. The men dismounted, shouting for the girl. She's mine, Boone yelled. Caleb fired once into the dirt near their boots. Next one goes higher, he said calmly. Boone froze. He saw the look in Caleb's eyes, a man who'd already lost everything and had nothing left to fear. After a tense moment, Boone cursed, spat, and turned his horse. You'll regret this, he hissed, then rode into the darkness, taking his men with him. The silence that followed was deep and endless. Caleb lowered his rifle, the sound of the windmill turning softly in the distance. Lena stood in the doorway, tears streaking her cheeks. You didn't have to do that for me, she said. He stepped closer, brushing a tear from her face with his thumb. Didn't do it for me. Did it because you're worth fighting for. She shook her head, her voice trembling. I'm not worth anything. He took her hand in his rough palm warm against her trembling fingers. You're worth everything to someone who finally sees you, he said. And I see you, Lena. Her tears turned to laughter then, soft, real, like sunlight after a storm. For the first time she believed the words. Weeks passed. Boone never returned. The ranch grew greener as spring came early that year. Lena began to smile more, her laughter echoing through the big wooden house. And Caleb, the man who thought love was something buried with his past, found himself watching her from the fields, feeling life return to places inside him he thought were gone. Forever, on a warm afternoon, she joined him by the river, the same spot where he'd first found her. She looked at him and whispered, Thank you for not giving up on me. Caleb smiled, tipping his hat against the sun. Guess we both needed saving. They stood there a long time, the sound of the river mingling with the wind, 2 souls who had found peace not in perfection, but in the quiet promise of being seen, accepted, and loved. If this story touched your heart, friend, don't just scroll past. Hit subscribe more, because every week, we bring you stories of courage, redemption, and the kind of love that still burns bright under the western sky. Your one click keeps these stories alive, helps new voices rise, and reminds the world that kindness still wins. Subscribe now, and ride with us through another tale next Sunday.